Welcome to FCPS All-Stars. We have with us today Earl Garner, Student Support Teacher at Heather Ridge School. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, during the day, I understand that you teach students at Heather Ridge School, but by night, you become a man with nerves of steel. Tell our audience about what you do in the evenings.
Well, actually, my night job had preceded what I do during the day because I drive education. Right now, I'm practicing mostly in the classroom, but I've done my share, trust me, on the road with people. And it's not as hazardous as many people think because, well, if you're trained and you know what to expect in advance, then you're pretty much prepared for a situation, most situations.
But when you drive those student cars, do they have the brakes on the other side?
Oh, absolutely. That's of paramount importance. That's a requirement by the state. They have to have dual mirrors as well.
Okay. When did you develop an interest in teaching driver's ed?
Actually, when I transferred to East Carolina University, I was in junior college on a basketball grant, and then I went to East Carolina University on a full athletic scholarship. And one of my assistant coaches said, would you like to have something that you can always fall back on? And if you need extra employment, this would be a good idea. So I asked him what it was, and he said, drive education. We have a traffic safety education program here that's one of the best on the East Coast. It paralleled the University of Maryland, which had a very good program. Okay. So I got interested in it. I took some classes. I liked it, and actually that's what got me into teaching driver education, because my other major was parks and recreation.
Okay, so you liked working with students?
Absolutely.
Okay. When did you actually start teaching driver's ed?
Oh, I'm going to say the fall of 1977. After I graduated the following fall, I applied for Baltimore City Schools, was accepted, and I was working for 2 years, though I was more or less of a part-time teacher, and then I became full-time in 1979. And I've been doing that ever since, in some way, shape, or fashion.
How did you get from Baltimore to Frederick? You drove, right?
I drive. People don't believe it, but I've been commuting for 33 years.
Wow.
As I mentioned, I was a new teacher in the late 70s, early 80s. And as you know, when you get budget problems, new teachers are the first ones who receive the axe. So in 1980, 81, I had a good year. I'm sorry, 79, 80, I had a good year, nothing happened. 80, 81, I got a letter at the end saying I was going to be laid off. They called me back because my principal and all said there's a good chance you will be called back. I was called back, but the same thing happened again the next year, and I said, well, this is not the cycle I want to follow. So I decided to venture out other school districts. I said I'll stay within an hour radius of Baltimore, which I'm a Baltimorean. And the first place I applied to was Frederick, and I've been here ever since.
Okay. And where did you teach first in Frederick County?
Well, with driver education, which I was teaching, we only had, at that time, 9 full-time teachers. You had to swing between 2 schools. I was at Middletown High School and Linganore for the most part, but I've taught just about at all the old schools. Now, when you're talking Tuscarora and these new schools, they weren't even thought about back then.
Do you like driving?
I would say so.
Okay. All right. Do you do any other traveling?
Oh, well, I do. I fly every now and then. I'll visit my brother who lives in San Antonio. I'm my oldest brother. I'm the youngest of 4.
Okay.
My son is in Surprise, Arizona, which is right outside of Phoenix, and he's in the Air Force, and I'll take a trip out there. Hopefully I'll get to see him again this summer.
And did you meet your wife in Baltimore, or did you meet her here in Frederick?
My wife's from Baltimore. Actually, we were almost neighbors.
Really?
Yeah. Well, we were neighbors, actually. She lived on the adjacent street to where I live, and for the longest time, we were friends and all like that. Our families were very close, but later on in life, we just had an attraction, and it became permanent. We were well in our adult lives by then.
Oh, okay. What's her name?
Michelle.
Michelle, and what's your son's name?
Rondrick. We call him Ron.
Hopefully you'll get to see Ron this summer.
hopefully.
Not driving.
Yeah, sometimes he gets, gets orders, and that kind of puts a damper on things. If he gets orders, he has to go, so we have to make rearrangements on a trip or something like that.
Okay. Now, speaking of your students at Heather Ridge, I know that you have your son and you've been dealing with him and working with him, and now you've parlayed that into working with other students. What would your students at Heather Ridge have to say about you?
Mostly they will say that they very rarely see me get upset. And I don't get out of character with them. But they'll say I don't get upset, and I don't seem to, put down people and things of that nature. And to me, I think that's somewhat of an attraction. I'm in a position where you have to be very, very familiar with the students, and you have to have a connection with the students.
Absolutely.
And that seems to work. I mean, my calmness and my patience, and they kind of like that, and that's the way I am, pretty much. And not only with the students, but I try to be like that across the board with everybody. So it does work.
So you really do have nerves of steel.
Yeah, I guess you can say that.
How do you manage that? Because it's hard to be, unemotional when you're unemotional or a difficult situation.
I guess I'm emotional. I guess I just don't show the emotion as, we're humans, so we're going to have emotions. You have to have emotions. But I guess the way you keep from showing your emotions is you understand that people are human, and to err is human. So you have to understand that people make mistakes, and they come up short on our expectations, and that's okay. And that's one of the ways I have that approach. I say, this person is just having a bad time or a bad situation. And working with the population that I work with, I understand that can happen at any time and any place. Just so happens the ones that we are associated with, it happens a little more frequently. That's all. But we all have our good moments and bad moments. And an understanding that allows you to deal with that, I think.
That's a good philosophy. I also heard that you developed something called the 10 Ps.
Yeah, that's something that goes way back. The position I'm in, before I got there, now Heather Ridge was the program, I think the third tier of a program. It started out as Elm Street, and then I think it was called Paces and Changes, or something of that nature. And then there was the Heather Ridge School, the building that we're in now. About, I would say, 27 years ago, I think that building was opened. Before I got in my position, it was like a revolving door. It's a tough position. And people would stay maybe a year, and then they would find something else to do. It was just too tough. It was just too stressful. And people would ask me, how do you stay there and do what you do for as long as you do? And I just started mentioning things I do, and I noticed everything I did had the beginning letter of P.
Okay.
Starting with patience.
Okay.
And when you're patient, everything seems to fall into place. It has to, because you're willing to wait. Things don't have to be on your time frame right away, and then that means you're accommodating other people, and that's basically it. It starts with patience, and then there's other P's. You have positive.
Okay.
You always try to find something positive with what someone does, because if you find something positive, it's easy to deal with the good things people do. Most of us as humans, we have a tough time dealing with the bad things that people do, or the things that are undesirable. So if we aggressively look for the good things, they'll surface, and it's easier to deal with that person. If I'm looking for the good things,
right,
and the positive things, then it's much easier to deal with that person than any other person for that matter.
We tend to find what we're looking for.
So basically, yes. So basically, that's how the 10 Ps develop, and then I found out you have to be professional, because we're all professionals.
Yes.
So professionals know their job. They will not reduce themselves. They always keep that air of professionalism.
Yes.
Professionals are willing to work and collectively with their peers and colleagues. And it just went on down the line. And
got it. Well, these are really great lessons to live and to learn by. And I want to thank you so much, Earl, for sharing those with us today and information
welcome.
about you driving and your driver's ed.
You're welcome.
And thank you for joining us at FCPS All Stars. Join us next week and shine on.